industrialization. So at the beginning of the period, we're talking about a farming-based agricultural society, and we'll be ending up with an industrial-based society. All right, three things that need to happen before we get there. What do we need just to have industry right at the beginning?
Electricity.
Electricity, okay. How do we get the electricity?
Thomas Edison. Or whoever invented it.
By the end of the period, yes, we will be there. All right, we're talking much earlier right now, mid to late 1700s.
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin? All right.
Coal.
So they first start powering industrialization through water mills, and then later will be coal, both of which are natural resources. Or land. All right. So we have land, we have natural resources. What's the next step we need to develop some industry? Does the coal just get to the factory on its own? Miners. All right, we got miners. And other people forming other workers, so labor. All right, and do these laborers work for free? Are factories free? Are raw materials free? No, we need money, which in economic terms we call capital. All right, so we have our natural resources, our labor, and our capital. These are our three keys to industry. All right, now last year you all learned your main causes of the First World War. Does anyone remember what that first one might be? Yeah?
Militarization.
Militarization? Yeah, we'll call that militarism. All right, so we got militarism. These are, don't remember A.
Assassination.
No, not assassination.
Allies.
Allies, yes. Alliances. All right, and those alliances are secret alliances in this case. All right, now let's skip on down to our N. So is this a war between cities? Is it a war between people? It's a war between nations, yes, absolutely, nationalism. All right, and our I.
Industrial.
Very, very, very close. If it's the British Empire, the French Empire, the German Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Imperialism.
Yes, sir. Or we'll call that imperialism / industry. Though we're getting a little crowded there. As industry is a necessary, imperialism is a necessary requirement of industry. You need your empire to extract your raw materials, your resources, bring those back to the imperial core, where they're manufacturing the goods, which are then shipped back out to the far-flung parts of the empire. All right, those are keys of industry, and by the end of our Industrial Revolution, we'll be entirely set for the First World War. All right, the Industrial Revolution is the shift from an oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the notes. One moment, everybody. I was just rolling along my own forward. Alright, so the Industrial Revolution is the shift from an agricultural-based economy in Europe and America to more industrial manufacturing-based economy. It began in the late 1700s in Great Britain. Anyone know why Great Britain? Comes back down to one of our keys of industry. Imperialism? Sorry, I hinted at that first. No. Our three keys to industry, not our four main causes of the First World War. Great Britain has natural resources. In the early industrial period, we're primarily running our machinery with water mills. England's got plenty of rivers to fuel those water mills. And it's got coal. English coal is near the surface and is fairly pure, meaning it's cheap to extract the coal. That coal is then used to fuel these steam engines, which are used to pump more water out of the bottom of the coal mines, allowing us to go deeper and get more coal, to fuel more steam engines, to get more coal, and maybe at some point you start building other things besides just coal draining steam engines. Right. Increased or improved farming technologies led to a food surplus in Great Britain. This food surplus led to population growth, which fueled the rise of urbanization and provided a large labor supply for the factories. All right, the industrialization spreads to the rest of Europe. Thanks to its early adoption of industrialization, Great Britain becomes the richest country in the world by 1850. France is still very unstable at this time as a result of the Napoleonic era and the French Revolution. German states are disunified. Germany is not a country yet. And in the case of the United States, the story is fairly similar to Britain. Plenty of resources, plenty of labor, plenty of the keys of industry. All right, the social impact of the Industrial Revolution. Due to that surplus of agriculture, the population almost doubles from 140 million to 166 million between 1750 and 1850. The Industrial Revolution created a new class in society, created the middle class and a new industrial working class. You think back to the medieval era, this replaces our former two-class system of the aristocracy and everyone else. The middle class is primarily composed of managers and then less wealthy owners of industry. As a result of some of the rapid and wide-sweeping changes that are sweeping industrializing nations, a period of instability is brought in through Europe, or into Europe, where governments attempt to maintain the old order, even amidst the changing world. In France, King Charles X censored the press and stripped voting rights, which will lead to his downfall and the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. And we start to see the emergence of nationalism, or an extreme love and pride in one's country, or support of independence. In 1848, France has another French Revolution after severe economic hardships and the oppressive government made people discontented. News of the Second French Revolution spread throughout Europe, starting with the German states. Unlike most of the revolutions we've talked about so far, these revolutions were unsuccessful. In the case of the Austrian Empire, ethnic disunity as well as political disunity led to a disunified front by the revolutionaries. As you can see here on this map, ethnic groups of Austro-Hungary, 1910, you have Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, Slovaks, Croats, Serbs, Romanians, Italians, and Latvians, all living in the same empire, all speaking different languages, having different customs, and in many cases, having different religions. As we've already mentioned, this led to a lack of unity among the revolutionaries between those who were moderate and those who were more radical. That led to an overall core resistance against the conservative older order that's trying to maintain its power. All right, two successful countries at this time. We have the unification of Italy and Germany. So after the Crimean War, which started in 1853, with the Russians against the Ottomans, this ended the concerts of Europe that was later joined by Britain and France. Italy would be unified in 1870, and Prime Minister of Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, orchestrated plans to unify Germany mostly through war. So in addition to the unification of Italy and Germany, wide sweeping changes are going through the rest of Europe as well. Great Britain enters the Victorian age under Queen Victoria. It's a time of peace and prosperity for England, and the British Empire continues to grow overseas. France begins its second empire with Napoleon III and the creation of an authoritarian state, although it will fall after the Franco-Prussian War. The Austrian Empire became the Austro-Hungarian Empire after it's defeated by the Prussians. The Hungarians seeing weakness in demanding concessions. And over in the east in Russia, the Russian Empire faced unrest, but continued its absolute monarchy ways. There was very little industrialization in Russia, and most people remained poor serfs, which is similar to medieval peasants. All right, in Latin America, we see quite a bit of change during this period. The American Revolution inspired revolutions throughout Latin America. Particularly important, Toussaint de Louverture leads 100,000 enslaved people in a revolt against France in 1804. This is the Haitian Revolution. Slaves on the Haitian plantations rose up and killed their plantation overlords, as well as most other white people on the island. Fears from looking at this example will be a large contributing factor to Southern fears about slave freedom in the period leading up to the American Civil War. And France will never let the world forget this. They, I believe, have stopped reparations, but up until just less than a decade ago, Haiti, the poorest country in the world, was still sending money to France to pay them back for their own independence. All right, two Latin/South American revolutionaries. The first is Simón Bolívar. He's a member of the Creole elite, and he'll lead a struggle of Venezuelan independence. If you can switch on this map, you can see he's the blue arrow leading south from the